everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Vital Descent. I'm your host, Patrick McFarland. This one is episode 237. Show notes may be found at vitaldescent.com/237. And returning to the show, I have Scott Spaulding. How's it going, Scott?
Oh, great. Great. Good to be back. Love the new format and, all the new stuff. And, I'm peeping Mises Pieces t-shirt also. So.
Oh, yeah. Well, I got my antiwar.com t-shirt on, and they're doing a fundraiser right now. So you can go to antiwar.com/donate. Just wanted to pump that. They have matching funds right now, and I think they will when this episode comes out. But Scott, I think you might be one of the, aside from Keith Knight and Kyle Ancelone, you might be one of the most frequent guests on the show, even though it's been like a year since the last time we talked.
Well, we'll bump those numbers up, but
yeah,
I got a long way to go to catch up with them. But
yeah, that's true. Well, I was glad to see you at the Ron Paul event, the annual conference this year. I met you at the one before that, but you and I had talked, and I'll do the screen record here. I was going to go back to, these are the episodes that you've been on. I don't know if you were on this one, but we first talked December 5th, 2020, where we talked about your tours, but then we decided to do like a deep dive going through all of your tours. And so we did your first, your two tours in Iraq, and then we were going to do your first tour in Afghanistan, which chronologically takes place before what we're going to talk about today. But since Haiti's in the news again, I thought that we would jump on and talk about your experience in Haiti.
Yeah.
So I guess to frame the issue, what's been going on in Haiti is that last year I did a piece on the assassination of the president, and there was kind of a power vacuum that was incredibly complicated and hard to explain. And there were it was like Colombian mercenaries that had like in a very dramatic fashion broke into his compound and assassinated him in the middle of the night. Then there was a question of who was going to be president. And the president who was assassinated had actually overstayed his term. And there were disputes about whether or not he was holding power illegally. And then he's assassinated. And then it's like he had already named a successor, but he hadn't installed the successor. So his current sitting prime minister, Claude Joseph, took power for a few days. And then Ariel Henry, who's the current leader of Haiti, he seized power soon after that, and he's been ruling Haiti since then. Although it's been disputed, there are a bunch of criminal element gangs called the G9 who have been kind of ruling like their own areas within Haiti, and they dispute, and a lot of the people dispute Ariel Henry as being the legitimate leader because they see him as being a U.S. puppet. And so these criminal gangs are ruling the country. And just recently, Ariel Henry announced that the Haitian government was going to stop subsidizing fuel prices. And that pissed everyone off and has caused fuel to skyrocket. There's been a lot of battles and fights over fuel, just people in the street and corrupt police officers coming through and taking all the fuel from these fuel depots. And a lot of the country has an unstable electric grid. So people rely on generators to power everything, but there's no fuel for the generators. And so like all economic activity in the entire nation has seemed like it's quit. There's street violence, there's fighting breaking out, there's starvation happening. I believe 4 or 6 million people have food insecurity at this point in time. And so this G9 is led by this colorful character named Jimmy Barbecue Cherizet. And it's French, so I don't know the pronunciation of that per se, but they're calling for Ariel Henry to step down. And so the UN, the US, our ambassador to the UN has proposed that there be a UN military intervention in Haiti. And since, Scott, you are a Marine and you have experience in Haiti doing this, sorry to go on for the whole introduction.
That was a great background.
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah.
And it's interesting too, because the energy issue is always relevant. And one thing to keep in mind that I sort of learned while I was there, and we'll come back to this, but they depend on, they're almost a huge chunk of their economy, I think it's in the 30s or 40%, maybe even higher, is remittances coming home through Western Union and whatnot. And that depends on having a working electrical grid. So without the electrical grid up and running, then they can't get their money transfers. And without getting their money transfers, the economy crashes even further. And then also just of interest is just today, because I was trying to do some homework and catch up, the fella Jean-Claude, who was the acting prime minister briefly, was interviewed by BBC about 6 months or so ago. And BBC sort of heavily insinuated that Moises and their party, well, at least was turning a blind eye to G9 criminality under that reign, so that they were sort of suggesting there was some kind of fealty or affiliation between those gangs, which kind of had me suspecting that it could be that those gangs are in part trying to oust Henry for political reasons. But of course, Henry, I'm pretty certain Henry has at least. What was interesting is Jean-Claude in that interview mentioned, this was a little bit a while, this was prior to the worst unrest, mentioned that, under his, or at least mentioned that he would like the UN possibly to get involved. And now you have Henry sort of accepting military aid, some armored vehicles from the US, and accepting and maybe suggesting that he would like the UN to come in and get involved. It's like everyone's just looking for the big stick to come in from outside to strengthen their cause, so sort of transitioning, like what I do know about Haiti, I started learning a while ago. Just as it happened, it probably started with me joining the Marine Corps, being curious about Haiti, because you learn, you're forced to memorize that the Marines that have won 2 Medals of Honor are Smedley Butler and Dan Daly, but you don't learn anything else about Smedley Butler really at all. And me being just curious, and on my second deployment, I picked up a copy of War is a Racket, which didn't convince me at the time, but it was interesting, and I was very intrigued by this sort of iconoclastic person who was a Marine brigadier general with 2 or arguably 3 Medals of Honor, and I was curious about that. So when I finished, I think it was when I finished my second deployment, I had to take a historiography lesson because I was a history major. And I had to, write. It was more or less how to write for history, and it just happened that my my advisor's specialty area was Haiti. So, of course, with those classes, the professors want you to write about something you know a good amount about already. It's kind of choose your own subject within Haiti, because that's my area of expertise. So I started digging into the Haitian intervention and learning a good amount about that, and how it, in a lot of ways, was an early step into World War I interventionism by Wilson, because he was trying to stave off like the French or Germans. Supposedly, one of the justifications was staving off the French or Germans building a coaling station. The Germans actually had relatively good relations there because they were, believe it or not, more amenable to marrying into Haitian families, because at the time there was a prohibition on anyone who was not native Haitian owning land or property. So the French and Americans were not okay with that, but some Germans were okay with marrying in, and in part this gave them access to property rights. So that's all to say, I read up about Haiti a little bit, and then kind of it sat in the back burner for a while. I was curious about it, but then I go to Afghanistan 2009, and we'll talk more about that on another show. But immediately, 2 weeks I get home from there, right before Christmas. I get home from Afghanistan. and we get news, we see the news of the Haitian earthquake, which was January. I don't know, I can't recall the exact date, but early January. I'd been home for about 2.5 weeks or so. And they put out the call they want some people from my unit who are already mobilized. So basically all of us that got home from Afghanistan and some other people who had been mobilized for this, that, or the other reason, they are asking us if anyone's willing to go. And I sit on it for a while, and this is if you're from the mid-Atlantic region, you might remember there was Snowmageddon. It was the 2010 was a pretty heavily snowy winter, and I was not acclimatized to. I mean, it's not where you're from, but it was a pretty snowy, cold winter, and I was not a fan. So I was like, you know what? I would rather not deal with the cold. So I'll go. I was also curious, and I actually did a little bit of soul searching about it, because I mean, basically I could have stayed home and been on demobilization, getting a paycheck to do basically nothing. I mean, the day I left, like demobilization in our reserve unit, like more or less you was just show up and collect a paycheck. The guys, my friends, all the day I left were taking a road trip, just took the day. They were getting paid. They took a trip up to Philly to have this one kid eat the world's biggest cheesesteak, because they were just going on little day trips on the taxpayer dime to different places to some eating competition show. And they were going to everywhere in the region and just watching him gorge himself on 6-pound milkshakes and whatnot. So the day I left for North Carolina, we drove down to North Carolina for me to get on the boat. And that's what the rest of the guys were up to. So there was part of me that just wanted to stay home and hang out and, collect a free check. But I decided to go, and we got on the boat down to Haiti. On the boat, what else is interesting is they had basically done an all call for any Creole speakers, anyone that spoke French or Creole who had was getting the linguist pay. More or less, if you had taken the language test, you were in the vicinity of North Carolina, they were ordered to get on the boat also. So we had a bunch of hodgepodge of sailors and Marines that were admin Marines and logistics and whatever, and engine mechanics or whatever, that were now just tasked as being linguists that got on the boat. And that MEU is a Marine Expeditionary Unit, had just gotten home from a 7th-month float themselves. They were home for about 2 weeks prior to this, and then were very salty about being basically told to pack up, reload the boat. They were just unloading the boat, and now they're reloading it. Of course, they left most of the aircraft behind except the helicopters, so some stuff it was a little less crowded, but that's all to say that they were looking to get out. They were looking to minimize their time and mission there, which is why we only ended up staying for about 2 months. And so we got there, I want to say about 4 or 5 days after the earthquake, all told. I can look up the date, and I have some pictures.
It's the 12th of January was when the earthquake hit. I wanted to jump in though and just ask a little bit about what did they tell you before you went? Was there any kind of prep training or background?
No, I mean, this is literally on let's say a Thursday, whatever, the day of or the day after the earthquake. They ask who's willing to go. We need volunteers, and the next day we were getting in a van down. Now, as it happens, the other folks who went were all pretty competent, and this was after I was a sergeant. This is my 3rd time doing the civil affairs job, so kind of knew roughly what my job there would be. Probably trying to direct humanitarian assistance and kind of take some of our knowledge about what to do in humanitarian assistance, disaster relief situations, and apply it. Which is, so we more or less had a team of experienced folks that were going, and we had a rough idea of what we would probably do there. some of the training we had relevant to this before was kind of simple. It didn't actually, or it would seem relevant. Some things we have been taught before about these situations is actually like bodies aren't the number one issue. People are going to focus, like people in these situations will focus on clearing out dead bodies when that's really, they're not really a health risk, at least not immediately or for, a few weeks. They're less important than taking care of the living. They're less important than running water flowing and making sure there's sanitation. Like those things are higher priorities, but people focus on that morbid part and they want to clean that up. And that's exactly what happened by the time we had gotten there, was people had actually pretty effectively removed a lot of rubble and bodies, at least from the area we got to, which was pretty far on the fringe of the epicenter. We were in an area, I ended up in an area called Petit Guave, and to the east of that was Grand Guave. That's the area that our MU took responsibility for. Kind of on the farthest outreaches of where there was relatively severe earthquake damage. So we got there, spent a day or two getting our bearings, and then they kind of divvied out areas of operations for the different groups. And they basically gave the logistics battalion an area of their own, this little area called Petit Guave, the city. And I was just kind of responsible for directing their traffic. Basically, the interesting thing, I mean, the reason the Marine Corps there's a variety of reasons the Marine Corps gets involved in these disaster relief things, but the least nefarious reason, or the strongest case for them getting involved, is that a MU, effectively, it's usually 3 ships. Now, the Marine Corps is reorganizing a little bit, so this is dated information. But at the time, the sort of organization was to have 3 ships and an air combat element and a pretty strong logistical element with the ability to sustain a battalion ashore for at least a month. So you could theoretically, with a MU, send about 1,000 infantry Marines, support about 1,000 infantry Marines ashore with aerial resupply and ship-based resupply continuously for about a 30-day supply. So, and that includes the ability to make tons and tons of clean water, tons of food being delivered more or less anywhere where there is a beach, or you can land helicopters. So at the very least, since they have this ability to deliver tons of food and water to more or less anywhere within 50 miles of ocean, it makes sense. The tool that it's a useful tool for a lot of disaster relief. Of course, since their primary strength is delivering food and water, and fuel to a lesser extent, at least in this situation, when you have a really great hammer, everything looks like a nail. So what I encountered when I was there is that, other things we learn about humanitarian assistance and disaster relief is like, sort of like one of the things that stuck out is you're supposed to do a market assessment, basically get tabs on the prices of things and whether prices are spiking and on what goods. And in particular, if it's not, you don't need to be worried if prices are what actually we were taught to look for as an indicator of like famine is prices dropping and meat being in the market, but no staples. So no rice or beans, which is a staple item in Haiti, shortages of rice and beans, but like tons of meat on the market, because that's I'm gonna lose. I don't have the word for it, but you're basically killing off your herd. You know what I mean? You're going into your breeding stock is when you're actually looking for famine. So one of the first things I did is notice that within a day or two of going out and about and seeing that the markets were still functional, but noticing those long lines at Western Unions and other things like that. So we're doing these, I'm coordinating basically finding locations, mostly missionaries and whatnot, places where we can kind of control the crowd, someplace that's enclosed, someplace where we can identify a key leader, like a local missionary, a local mayor or something, somewhere where we can bring a truck full of MREs and a truck full of water and have a nice orderly line go through and deliver goods to people and kind of get the word out to them. That was my main task. And then sort of secondary to this, they're looking at me for, well, how do we know when we can leave? How can we justify that things are good here and get out of here because we want to go home? And essentially, is this food and delivery working? And they're looking at me like I'm crazy, especially after a few days. They start noticing people collecting the MREs and reselling them and not eating them like they expected. And the Marines are kind of ungrateful about this. We've come all the way down here. We were supposed to be home on leave. And we're here giving out MREs and people are reselling them. I also, I was not bunked up, but I just happened to kind of get friendly with what they call the human intelligence exploitation teams, the HET team. And in this case, they were kind of characters, and they get locked onto this idea that somebody's buying up these MREs, and the Marines in general were kind of irritated about this. So they wanted to find these people and route them out. And what I kind of got to the bottom of is the reason they're buying the MREs and stockpiling them for other future disasters or, what something else might befall them. And they're giving out small amounts of cash for them. And I'm starting to put together the pieces that the problem is cash flow, that the markets are functional. There's plenty, at least at this time, the main port in Port-au-Prince where most rice was imported from. And Haiti had become rice dependent because of the actions of the Clintons in the 90s. So we can maybe loop back to that later. But, basically, they were encouraged to engage, make some trade agreements that favored rice importation, and that made them more dependent on imports for staple crops. And then when their primary peers were destroyed from the earthquake, then eventually they were going to run out of staples in their diet. But at this time, I'm picking up on just different pieces, that there's people buying up MREs, that there's these lines at the Western Union, and there's something funky with the markets where we should be expecting to see staple crops kind of be eaten down because I know the port is damaged, but we're not seeing that. I managed to put together the pieces that the real problem is the Western Union's being closed or not being open. So then I kind of suggest to them that don't need to worry so much about handing out these MREs. You can keep doing it, but you don't need to focus your effort. They're not starving. What we need is to figure out how to get this money transfers. And somewhere along the way, some class, I had learned what a remittance was, and I had to explain to this battalion commander wasn't a stupid guy. He understood it, but had to explain to the people up there that this is a remittance dependent economy. They need money sent home to them. And I think maybe my interpreter helped me with that too, or somebody, or some of the people I was interviewing, I'm trying to get money sent to me and I can't get it.
Yeah. Do you want to explain for the audience what a remittance
Sure.
is?
Yeah. So basically, you're, all over Central Latin America, all over the world, people, their dad, brother, uncle, cousin, whoever works in New York City at a car wash and is sending $100 a month home to his family. And that's what they're dependent on primarily or largely for their for their livelihood. So remittance is just money transfers home from abroad, and and Haiti in particular has always been heavily dependent on them. So the inability to go to Western Union was making it impossible for them to get cash to buy the things they need. The things they needed existed, but they didn't have cash for them because they needed, and especially with this outpouring of support at the time. I don't know, everyone was with Haiti. Everyone was donating at the time. So they knew that there was money that should be waiting for them to get, but they couldn't get it. So I talked to the Western Union people. I find out that they, my first instinct, because of in Iraq, there were sometimes issues with money deliveries to the bank from the central banks, just making sure that they can actually get there because the roads were partially damaged. There was one area through the mountains where there was road blockage that we were working on clearing out, but it's not that. Money can get through. They have money. It's the electricity and the internet, which leads me to finding their power plant, basically, which was, at least for that city, was just I want to say about somewhere between 5 and 8 like semi-truck sized generators just running off of diesel was the power plant for the area there. They were big, beautiful, brand new generators, but a few of they'd all been knocked off their axis, basically, or the foundation they were sitting on had subsided.
So it was literally, the power station was like 8 diesel generator trucks.
Yes. Just very large diesel generators. So that's also feeds back into it. At this time where you're hearing about all this fuel coming in, that's a huge part of their power infrastructure is running off of diesel generators, as far as I'm aware. So when they can't import that and truck in the diesel to these generators, that's going to take out their electrical grid as well. So yeah, that was sort of my kind of, I wouldn't say big success, but like a eureka moment sort of thing that I got to go to the battalion commander with and say, hey, look, we can get out of here. More or less all our problems are solved. The immediate damage from the earthquake was relatively bad. There was a hospital that was open. There were a lot of people caring. There were a bunch of different people taking care of. There were NGOs doing water and whatnot, but nobody was really addressing the electrical issue. So all we had to do was get some heavy equipment to kind of lift these things back up. We had cranes and whatnot that could lift these things back up and get them back on their feet, level them, pour a foundation, and get the electrical grid for that area running again. So that was a kind of nice feeling and a nice, like, all right, we can give them out a fish all we want, but this isn't going to solve the problem kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you a couple questions just about like the conditions. So like, I mean, why don't you tell the audience, like, when you first arrived, so you're on the ship, is it one of those ships where like the big ramp drops down on the beach and like you can drive equipment off?
Yeah, so we took a big, looks like a small aircraft carrier to get there. There's, it's called a it was the Baton is the ship I was on. I think it was an LHD, so it's a landing helicopter dock. It looks like a small aircraft carrier, a little shy of 1,000 feet, and it's got a well deck in the back that small boats and amphibious vehicles can leave and enter the ship from. As it happens, for whatever reason, to get ashore the first time, we had to take a helicopter over to another boat that I can't recall what they call this. It was another part of the MEU. It's a ship that had sort of a large deck on the back of it for helicopters and a well deck also. And we got on, it was called the Gunston Hall, I think, or Carter Hall. In any case, and we took what's called an LCU, which is a kind of the landing craft you're thinking of. It's a relatively large, bigger than like a World War II Higgins boat.
Okay.
Good size, but it has that ramp. It can land on the beach, and it had the ramp that drops. So that's literally what we took ashore when I first got there. Just this slow, large LCU. And the first where I ended up staying the majority of the time, there was the first night or two where we were figuring things out. We stayed at like a a little missionary, like a little villa that was a mission, was a Christian mission. Just stayed on their like porch basically. That was my first experience of an aftershock too. I was in my, I had taken to sleeping in a hammock. So I was in a hammock between two trees, and, it really didn't, it just, I woke up swaying in it and realized that, and then I got out like, what is this? And that was my only experience of an earthquake. It is strange. It's an odd feeling, like the ground feels a little liquefied. And there wasn't really much of a note in that little village, but when I got to Petit Guave, it was a few miles down the road to the west from where we came ashore. There were a few spots. It kind of was through a mountain. There were a few spots where the road had been like landslides had taken it, had piled up on the road, but there was like a path cleared for them for like one vehicle to get through. And we get to Petit Guave. There's a good number of buildings that have pancaked because a lot of the big problem is they aren't really that prone to earthquakes, relatively speaking. And they just use your kind of standard developing world construction of like rebar, poured concrete, and concrete floors. And then you kind of cinder block it. So you make a rebar columns, and then you support a floor that's made of concrete, and then another set of rebar columns for another floor when you decide to add one on. And of course, when you have this slab of concrete as your for each floor of the house, if those columns go out, then the whole thing sandwiches and comes down. So you had some houses that had gone down, a few older brick buildings that had toppled. The pier in Petit Guave was like a small concrete pier, had subsided. It was actually built probably using corvée labor, which corvée is basically conscripted or sort of forced labor, and theoretically in lieu of taxes, that was implemented under the French and then later implemented by the Marines when we occupied Haiti. So this was a pier that had been built in the 1920s under the planning of the Marine Corps, which was interesting. But it subsided in the earthquake, so that couldn't be used to bring anything in or out. Fortunately, there was a good beach nearby where you could land landing craft, and the hovercraft, the old LCACs, the big old hovercraft thing that you might have seen sometime. I got a ride. That was my first ride on one of those, was getting back and forth to the boat at some point. What else am I seeing there? Just a lot of street markets. There was a lot of street market activity, a lot of people out. Minor, there was sort of close to where that power plant was in the mountainous region between Grand Guave and Petit Guave. There was some kind of open pit mine. And those people, it was an American fellow, had used his equipment to help clear the streets and help clear rubble before we ever got there. So obviously that everything was out of the streets, but there were still collapsed buildings. And what else am I seeing?
Well, I mean, so did you had remarked like when you first got there, the first village that you were at where you stayed the first nights, you didn't see any damage. Did you see any like corpses or?
No, that was the remarkable part is that people did sort of like I was suggesting shouldn't be done or isn't ideal. People had cleaned up all the bodies more or less before we, like within the 3 or 4 days it took us to get there. People had removed any bodies. Mostly what there were tent cities. A lot of people sleeping outside of their houses.
Probably they worried about aftershocks.
Yeah. They were concerned about aftershock. So a lot of people were sleeping outside of almost no one was sleeping in their houses. Us included. We were sleeping in tents. When we moved to Petit Guave, it was an old high school that was definitely the foundation had been unsettled. There were some parts where the building had cracked severely. We weren't supposed to enter it. But there was like a basketball court and whatnot that we'd pitch tents in. And so we were sleeping out near the around this high school in the town. The school was, I think no longer usable. It was going to have to be condemned. That's what we were seeing. Just severe enough damage that you would not want to go back in unless you probably would be better starting from scratch.
What did the place smell like? I mean, sights, sounds, feelings.
The site, I mean, it was just third worldy. A lot of burned plastic smell, a lot of burned garbage, lots of open garbage in the streets situation. But people were out and about. I mean, there were still, like I said, the markets people were still street vending. There were still people relatively active, at least in this area. How would you compare it to Iraq? So the building style is very similar, as far as how things were constructed. That poured concrete and rebar kind of construction is pretty common. But compared to Iraq, I guess, yes, definitely there was a difference in like not just the way that people looked or behaved, but they were curious about us and friendlier. This was kind of regarded generally, this 2010 intervention, which was pretty massive by the U.S. military and other, militaries, was kind of regarded as like redeeming us. Haitians were very skeptical of the Marine Corps after the 2004 coup that we were involved in, the 1994 Operation Restore Democracy we were involved in. They got a bad reputation there. I'm not sure the details for why. And then, the intervention in 1915 to 1934 gave the Marine Corps a pretty bad reputation in Haiti, and not welcome. And this was regarded as kind of, at least in the Marine Corps' eyes, as kind of redeeming us. And people were generally friendly, if a little bit skeptical at first, but, I guess I would say the differences would be Iraq, people were war weary and more guarded and worried about shifting alliances and being seen with you. You don't have that so much in Haiti. The only thing like that would be, we did seek out there were lots of NGOs active. If you've ever seen, I don't want to waste time trying to think of it, but the documentary about foreign aid, it's primarily in Haiti, about people getting rich off foreign aid. There's it's mainly centered in Haiti. Lots and lots of NGOs active. We ran into people from Czech Republic, from World Food Program, from the UNHCR, you name an NGO, there was somebody there who had been working for a while already. The only ones that wouldn't work with us were Médecins Sans Frontières, because they maintained like a strict neutrality thing. They wouldn't be in meetings with us, which we were always aware of, and we weren't going to push them on that. They were doing good work. We weren't going to show up unannounced at their hospitals or anything. But we did kind of try to back channel, see if there was anything they needed or we could do for them. But yeah, as far as the people go, they generally had a pretty positive attitude towards us. Our interpreter, my interpreter in particular, was, let's just say, a prolific patriarch, and he was borderline taking advantage of his situation, being a Haitian American in Haiti, with access to things. I guess he was making girlfriends all over the place. At one point, he tried to set me up with, it was him and the power plant owner, or sort of manager of the power plant. I was pretty certain they were trying to set me up with a prostitute. Okay, I'm just going to hang out here, guys.
Were you guys? I assume you guys were armed.
Yeah. We did carry a rifle and a few rounds. Nothing. We weren't loaded for bear, but there was an allegation that there was a woman, female Marine, who like went to pop a squat and supposedly was attacked by someone in the night, potentially, threatened with rape or whatever. So we were supposed to not be out alone, be armed. But generally there wasn't any real danger to us so all of that was nice. That was my first and really, well, aside from a short trip to Honduras for a training exercise, like 2 weeks, it was my first time really doing my job and knowing what it was. Cause that was still in 2006 and I was relatively new, in 2010 doing this. Like it was my first time being someone where it wasn't a combat environment, but there was work to do, and yeah, the people were generally friendly and open towards us, which was more pleasant, not that all Iraqis weren't, but they were more on guard, some other interesting things. So I said that human intelligence exploitation team, I had to sort of talk them down from hunting down this thing. I went on a ride with them one day, and they were on this goose chase. So this is sort of not nefarious exactly, but the other reasons for doing these mews, or when you are doing one of these things, they were out checking out beaches that could be theoretically useful. And they were also trying to they were busy, rather than helping collect information about people's needs in the event of this emergency or helping me find key leaders. They were kind of more interested in trying to find drug dealers or gang members. And so they were just off on these goose chases sometimes, rather than being like, yeah, we're trying to find out about this guy. There's some shady dude or whatever. We're driving off into the mountains to see what we can find out about them, which was just interesting. And they took a day trip off to the beach. I think we drove separately from them, but they were just sort of careless about certain things. They like something that me as a civil affairs guy would be like, what are you doing? They ran over somebody's chicken. Like, why? Didn't have to do that, guys. You could have just let it. In any case, we took the other things we ended up doing. Towards the end of our time there, we heard a storm came through, not severe, but just a pretty heavy storm. And we were told that there was, that the road out to Kai, which is where that later earthquake was, that more recent earthquake was out in Okai, which is all the way west towards the end of the peninsula. And so we took a drive out to assess the roads, and we met up with the UN MINUSTA mission that was there. I can't tell you what MINUSTA stands for, but basically the UN mission, that peacekeeping mission, was called MINUSTA, MINUST something. And I will say we parked in their camp, and these were, Nepali peacekeeping mission, was a UN Nepali. It is no surprise to me that they had a cholera breakout. Like, their camp was filthy, very just terrible sanitation. And that may not have been the camp where the breakout was, but it's not surprising to me that it was very, very poor camp sanitation, that I did notice when I was there. So then when I later heard that the, UN peacekeepers were responsible for the cholera outbreak, it was not, it's like, yep, that makes sense. And then the other thing, I guess I didn't see this there, but just thinking of my interpreter, the other thing they had was a sort of UN sex scandal with basically UN troops having, sort of taking advantage of their position, having the ability to distribute goods to a very impoverished population led to some instances of basically, you know, I don't know the situation. There were lots of allegations of sexual impropriety. And I also, kind of interestingly, one of the UN guys I worked with, he was from the High Commission for Refugees, had a very beautiful, very young Haitian wife. You know what I mean? We paid him a visit. I played a poker game at their house one night. And it's just like, you know, these sorts of things are what don't exactly make this. I'm sure it's very nice for you, and you very well might be doing very good things for refugees, but this just doesn't look good. You know what I mean? The rich white NGO worker getting a high salary, living in the nicer house in town, you know, kind of, you know, I'm sure that is appealing to people in poverty, you know, to have somebody who's rich and stable, but it's not exactly great.
I'm trying to see here who was the UN soldiers who were accused of this sexual misconduct during. I'm looking at my article here. There was so to achieve these elections, the Washington Post advocates yet another internal peacekeeping force occupy Haiti, much like the 2004 to 2017 UN stabilization mission. This is an occupation they conceded introduced a cholera epidemic to Haiti, received many, quote, credible allegations of rape and sexual abuse, and, quote, fathered hundreds of babies born to impoverished local women and girls. It constituted troops from Nepal, Brazil, and Uruguay. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So Haitians, let's see. So many babies were. I'm looking at a Reuters article now.
Yeah.
So many babies were fathered by the Haitians that they nickname them, or born by foreign peacekeepers. The Haitians nicknamed them Petite Minusta.
That's kind of
girls as young as 11 were sexually abused and impregnated by UN peacekeepers. Yeah. So that's an article from 2019.
Yeah. I laugh, but it's not funny. I mean, it's just
I understand.
Horrible beyond. Yeah, well, I mean, when you were there, I guess the other thing I wanted to hit up and make sure we talked about was, I mean, were there any local leaders, like government officials? I mean, so you had mentioned meeting up with local leaders who were maybe not government officials, but people in the community.
Yeah. So the main people I recall having a sit down meeting with the mayor of this or that place. There's also this, I didn't really get a good handle on the political structure at the local level there. It was all very unclear. There were these organizations called like Paysans something. I forget what, I can't remember the acronym right now. I could find some pictures, but there were these organizations, like peasants organizations that were sort of semi-political. In my time there, did not have a clear handle on who was who really wielded power. And we weren't super interested in it, except to say, I recall there being something in our village of basically don't bother going to the mayor. If I remember the NGO people said, basically, it's all corrupt. Don't bother with them. Just do what you need to do around them. You don't want to lend any more legitimacy to them than there is. It's just somebody's cousin or uncle who has of relative importance controlling. You know what I mean?
Well, in a way, it almost sounds like anarchic in a way.
Yeah, that's the strangest part about it. I mean, I don't want to belittle anarchy with that.
Right. Yeah.
But it's well,
it's a customary legal system. You know what I mean? Yeah.
It's trying to get a handle on Haitian politics is. Hats off to people that can really get a grip on it, because it seems that there are these kind of just vague alliance. Everything's very vague alliances. Nobody admits to anything, and then it's very peculiar because I don't know, sort of like my interpreter also later, a few years later, texted me, and he mentioned, and we didn't stay friends, but we didn't fall out either. But I got a strange text basically suggesting that he was planning on running for president in Haiti around the year of that election. Like, I don't know what your odds are. And I literally couldn't even begin to guess whether he had a good shot or not, because it seems so strange who rises to power there and how is just so opaque to me. And that's partially for lack of really, really concerted effort. I mean, who arises to power in the political parties here is somewhat opaque as well.
Right.
But I really, when I do try to dive into it, it's immediately just a mess to figure out who is who and who's competing with who and what the history of it is. Aside from to say that the U.S. government really doesn't seem to like Aristide.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right. Well, let's. I want to do some visuals here. Like, so I just have the map here, and then I don't know if you could direct me to where it is.
Oh, sure. So I was in. So if you look, sort of see where the P in Port-au-Prince is.
Yeah.
All right. So to the west of that, see where that notch drops down?
Yeah.
That area is called like Gonave, I think. And that's where some of the Marine battalion, our area of responsibility started from there. And then if you go west from there along the coast, I think you have a pin dropped on either Grand Guave or Petit Guave, don't you? Or there's a little, see that red dot there?
Yeah.
Right there. That's Petit Guave.
Okay.
Oh,
right there. Yep.
Yeah, where I was. So that I was mainly working kind of everywhere, sort of between to the east of that along the road. So back to your right is where, sort of in that area was the mountains, and that's where the power plant was. Yeah, so that's sort of a mountainous area, and you can see that mining area, that sort of open pit. Yep, there you go.
Okay.
That I was referring to. And so somewhere slightly to the east of that would be the power station. I'm not sure if it's probably that large concrete pad there.
This
off
one
the
here?
side of the road.
Or this one?
Yeah. It's probably that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there it is. You can see those semis lined up. Those generators.
Right here?
Yep.
Yeah.
Pretty certain that's it.
Man, that's so interesting.
Yeah, and then if you pop back out, I'm not. So we ended up staying. Well, you don't have to go that back at just in Petit Guave.
Yeah.
Kind of. You see where that point is, or you see where that orange. What's that orange thing?
This one here.
Zoom in on that. That's probably the school we stayed at. Nah, I think so.
Yeah.
And as it happens, the Spanish Marine Corps took over the area after us, or they had responsibility prior to. You're looking for street view?
Yeah, I'm just trying to see if there's anything to see.
Yeah, let's see what else. The other thing that's interesting, kind of, I guess I think I mentioned wanting to loop back to, was that when I was there, I discovered like the water cistern they had up in the mountains, because we were checking out their water supply. Well, let's see if there's any other points of interest. That's kind of the only areas I worked in. That island in the middle is called La Gonave, and I'm going to mention a story about that in a minute. It's kind of just a very sparsely populated island in the middle of the bay there, but it was always kind of fascinating staring out at it from where we were. We had a pretty good view of it across the bay.
Welcome to the portion of the show where I tell you how you can help support this content. The best way to do that, guys, is to go to libertyweekly.club. Yes, I haven't changed the URL yet, but this is my membership website that also functions as a newsletter. So if you go to that website, libertyweekly.club, hit the subscribe button in the upper right-hand corner, and you can subscribe for the free newsletter, and I send out a lot of free content. However, there is a section in those free emails that is premium, and that premium section includes early access to my episodes, access to bonus episodes, and preprints of my articles before they're published at the Libertarian Institute or other outlets. So again, go to the website, hit subscribe in the top right-hand corner, and sign up for that email list. You go through the page here and you can see all the content that I've set out in the past. There's a whole bunch of it, guys, and you get access to those previous emails that have gone out as well. Another way to help support me is to go to vitaldescent.com/stitchfix and sign up through my link there. You'll get $25 off your first order, and I will also get a $25 credit. Guys, I use this to buy my wardrobe. I'm a father of two. I have my own business. I do this, and I don't have time to go shopping. Can't haul the wife and kids around to have a leisurely shop for myself to pick these clothes. So what Stitch Fix does is that they pick the clothes for you. They send them to you in fixes, and it's really awesome stuff. These are all the pieces that I personally have bought myself. There's a lot of work stuff in there, but there's also casual stuff. I got an awesome plaid shirt that's in there, a flannel, really love that. I got this really cool sweatshirt. I got these awesome boots and a nice windbreaker, really good stuff. So go on over to vitaldescent.com/stitchfix. You can also get Vital Descent, really hard not to say Liberty Weekly, Vital Descent merchandise with the cool, awesome new logo from Mises Pieces. You can get all these kinds of things, all this merch. You got coffee cups, pint glasses, sweatshirts, premium t-shirts, premium sweatshirts, all that good stuff there at vitaldescent.com/merch. Also, guys, I started a TikTok channel, and I think that'll be really cool, trying to get more eyeballs on this content and more views. You can see it's already garnering a bunch of views, where I do anti-war cartoon reviews and a lot of cool stuff there. So vitaldescent.com/TikTok is where you can find me. My handle is at @PatMcFarland_, the same as my Twitter handle. Okay, guys, that's about it. Check out those things. Please help support this content. Help me pay my producer and make the show better for you guys. Thanks.
I ended up, of course, when I got home, I transferred to what's called the McMoss, Marine Corps Civil Military Operations School. And it was right next to the Marine Corps University Library, and they had a great collection of Marine Corps books. And I kind of sat down. I don't know if you've ever done this, or you're the kind of nerd that just sits down and finds an interesting section of the library and just sits down and starts leafing through things. But one day I was just sitting down and I came across this one book, or this story of, so I'm at the Marine Corps Civil Military Operations School, and I'm looking for examples from Haiti to use historically, because there's this 20-year occupation of Haiti. And I had found while I was there that the Marine Corps had built piers and had built water cisterns, and they did a lot. Reading some of the books, I can't remember what book in particular I came across, but just like we were doing in Afghanistan, and to a lesser extent Iraq, because Iraq was more developed road-wise already, they spent a lot of the effort that the Marine Corps spent in their early years in Haiti was building roads all over the place, one Marine. And the other thing that was fascinating about it to me was that this was from a time that I kind of had always wished for in the Marine Corps. They sell you this idea that in the Marine Corps, and it's more true than in other services, that an NCO, an E4, or even a Lance Corporal that can lead a squad the person with 3 years in the Marine Corps would be in charge of as many people and have as much responsibility as someone who's been in the Army for 10. And that is somewhat true, but it just seems like in the past, it was much more true. So, for example, during the Haitian occupation, they were taking these corporals sometimes and making them, you could get double pay if you volunteered to be a officer in the Haitian gendarmerie that Smedley Butler created. When they occupied Haiti, they disbanded the Haitian military, and he recreated, this was his first attempt at he had this idea that he had been concocting since his time in Mexico, that they should create a constabulary force that's sort of semi-military, semi-police, and organized along military lines. This is what he brought to Philadelphia when he started militarizing the police in Philadelphia. It was kind of this is where he tested it out in Haiti, was trying to create this militarized police force that was called the gendarmerie. And to do it, at least at first, they commissioned sergeants and corporals from the Marine Corps as lieutenants or as officers in the Haitian gendarmerie, which meant they got basically double pay. They were getting paid from the Haitian customs house levies that they were collecting, because that was the whole reason for the intervention, was to make sure that the bankers got repaid, because they had offered a bunch of loans to Haiti, and the Marines took literal control of the customs house, and all taxes that were collected went through them. And some of that money would go right back to a Marine Corps corporal who is now serving also as a Haitian gendarme lieutenant in charge of a squad of Haitian soldiers. And what was interesting about that is there were these cases, the one relevant to La Gonave that was very just fascinating to me was this person returned to this. And I'm sure this is sort of a romance, the book that was written about it, but it was called The White King of La Gonave. It was this Marine who served one tour in Haiti, and he was basically in an administrative role for the Marine Corps. He served his first tour, basically administering, like doing legal administration, like they were arresting people for practicing voodoo and for other things. And he was sort of doling out the punishments, and he gave a relatively light punishment to this woman from La Gonave for some crimes, like something to do with practicing voodoo. He returns back to Haiti on a second tour, and he gets a commission as an officer, and he's posted at La Gonave as the only Marine on that entire island. He has his gendarmes, his military that he's in charge of. And as it happens, this woman that he had more or less pardoned was a high priestess, let's say. She was a relatively important woman, so the story goes. And they made him king. They coronated him as king, according to the book, according to this. But I think it was kind of a dime novel. It had the feel of sort of being a played up story. But the story goes that basically this Marine Corps lieutenant or Marine Corps sergeant, Haitian gendarme lieutenant, basically was the king of the island for the 2 years that he was posted there. And then he gets his orders to leave, and he gets posted as a recruiter in Philadelphia. It just goes back to being a recruiter, which I don't know. It's just a fascinating story. And the other story I found of real interest was this fellow named Herman Hannikin. So one of the jobs we had at McMoss was going to, this was later on, but they changed the names of these things several times, but they started calling the Marines that were supposed to train the Afghan police and Afghan army, they started calling them SFAT teams, Security Force Assistance Teams. And so we were periodically flying out when they were getting ready to deploy. Part of their time spinning up at 29 Palms, which is where they did their final training before going to Afghanistan, was the civil affairs guys were supposed to teach them a little bit of civil affairs stuff that they were supposed to then impart upon the Afghans, and also we were supposed to try to get them to jive with that, to not to just think about train. Okay, we've got to train these Afghan soldiers how to kill and how to fight. That's our job. But also like, how to do all these other good, like, especially if you're in charge of police, how do you lead police and enforce rule of law as, how do you teach them to do these things? And I kind of took it upon myself to try to get them to buy into like, basically not hating the Afghans, buying into the culture and believing that they could do some good in this mission at the time. Not something I necessarily believe now, but so I gave them this example of Herman Hannekin, who was he was a Marine. He won the Medal of Honor in Haiti and then also won the Navy Cross, more or less pulling the same trick twice. He was serving as a lieutenant. Sorry, that's my cat. Serving as a lieutenant in charge of a Haitian gendarme force. And he more or less had learned the language so well that he could pass, at least in the dark, as a Haitian. And he more or less infiltrated two resistance groups in Haiti, walking right in and meeting like the head of the resistance. There was a fellow named Charlemagne Perrault. That's how he won his Medal of Honor for. And then another fellow he killed later, more or less walking right into the meeting, pretending to be among them, learning the passwords, learning like, infiltrating this, and then walking in right in and walking in with a few of his gendarmes behind him that were also Haitian, murdering the leader of the resistance group right in front of the rest of the resistance, and then, telling them to disperse or die, and he pulled that trick twice in Haiti, winning, got to have balls of steel to do that, to be honest. And, but also you have to buy in, learn enough of the culture, learn how to actually integrate yourself in and get the trust of people. And then he went on. I guess a lot of Marines were not, they didn't love the idea of coin and fighting insurgencies. They want to fight the good big wars, they want to fight China now. So I tried to convince them that Herman Hannekin's later career, if you've heard of Chesty Puller, Herman Hannekin won the Silver Star as Chesty Puller's battalion commander, and then was promoted to be Chesty Puller's regimental commander when Chesty Puller took his position as battalion commander. So the idea being this isn't a career killer. This isn't whatever. This is, if you buy into it and you do it well, it can teach you skills that are transferable. The other thing so that was just fascinating stories that I picked up. The other thing I noticed that was very similar to our time in Afghanistan is that these Marines were relatively independent. They were often pretty rural areas. Sort of like the platoons or squads we were putting off in rural areas to do counterinsurgency. And of course, the first thing they started doing is building roads. They wanted to make it easier to connect to each other. So all we were doing all over Afghanistan was as a civil affairs guy, was paying contractors to just to level and plow a gravel road between one fob and another. We were calling it, giving them same thing they called it in Haiti, giving them access to markets and connecting them and building infrastructure for them. But in reality, 90% of what we were doing it for was to make it easier to get from one base to another. And the Marines in Haiti did the same thing, but using conscripted local labor, which was sort of at least, not as good as paying outright for it. But those are just, I don't know, some of the connections I made to my time in Afghanistan and what I learned about the Haitian occupation.
Well, I think it's really interesting too, because it kind of connects the dots of the United States going from, really taking the role of being an empire. And a lot of those seeds were sown in Haiti, it seems like to me. And those connections, you mentioned that the history of the Marine Corps in Haiti, literally doing the job of Wall Street banks, right? Who had financed the entire island. So
yeah,
it's like fascism. That term is so overused now, but what do you call it when the U.S. military becomes a direct servant of Wall Street?
Oh yeah, literally. The Marine Corps was running Haiti. They were serving as the government of Haiti. And then you have, this is it's possibly an untrue story. I know I read it in a book. I cannot find it again. I checked Maverick Marine. It wasn't mentioned in there, which gives me some doubt as to whether it was true. Because a lot of the stuff that was written in the 20s, like that Faust and Workus book, the White King of Laganov story, I think was a little bit hyped up and, turned into, what do they call it? A dime romance, kind of playing up the action and making it seem bigger than it was. And one of the stories I read in some book that I picked up was that Smedley Butler more or less climbed it is true that at bayonet point, they more or less forced the Haitian Congress to ratify a constitution that Smedley Butler wrote, basically giving them all this power. The story that is certainly true, but the story is that the president at the time was hiding in the bathroom of the mansion, refusing to come out to avoid doing like this signing away his country. And Smedley Butler supposedly climbed the window on the outside, jumped in through the bathroom window, and then frog marched the president into Congress. Is supposedly the story. But yeah, you're getting into fascism. It's literally, it's just this, they tried to maintain this little veneer of legitimacy, which I guess, to some extent they always do, they always hide it behind some legalese. I mean, at the point where you're putting people at bayonet point to ratify a constitution, you can hardly call it legal, but for some reason it feels necessary to us to convince ourselves that we're doing good.
That's kind of like the history of post-World War II Japan. The United States essentially writing the entire new Japanese constitution. And this is beside the point, but now we have the rearmament of Japan with this whole Asia pivot, putting them in that position. Yeah, it's really interesting. So then you, throughout your time there, you had identified the Western Union problem. And so you were able to solve that by fixing the electrical problem. And what was, I guess towards the end of your time there, what did that kind of look like?
So yeah, more or less, they were looking for like I said, the entire MU wanted the green light to say that they had met the immediate needs of the disaster and could go home. So we were there. We were supposed to be there as temporarily as possible. One other thing of interest, I get. We can come back to it or not. But so with the going home part is basically the logistics regiment, the infantry companies, and then the logistics regiment all packed up and went back onto the boat. When we abandoned the school, it was a little bit chaotic. It wasn't quite fall of Saigon, but there were Haitians just waiting to see what was left behind. So it was kind of like we had this, and we didn't leave much behind. We gave away everything we could. But we signed away a lot of the tents to different NGOs or hospital organizations. There was an NGO running a clinic adjacent to us. So we gave them a lot of the larger general purpose tents. But we kind of had to pull in this ring of concertina wire around us as we were slowly shrinking the base and then as it got to be small enough, people were just leaping over it to grab lumber and whatever other junk we had left behind. Which was it didn't get ugly or anything, but it was mildly chaotic. And then myself and my interpreter we moved down the road to the Spanish Marine Corps base, which was very interesting. So they had set up a little base there, right on the beach, more or less, in some kind of industrial compound. And so we stayed there for maybe a week or so. Celebrated the Spanish Marine Corps' birthday with they had wine and they had a birrico ham every night. um, yeah, the Mew had its problems. Their ship, the main ship was desalination plant, runs on a steam boiler. So it has to, and you can't run salt water through the steam boiler because it'll calcify up with salt, right? So they have to desalinate the water first and then run it through the boiler. And they use that water also for their drinking and bathing water. So the one time I had gone back, like they weren't giving us hot food because they didn't have enough water to cook, supposedly. The one time I went back to the boat, I was so looking forward to a shower. This whole time I hadn't been able to really get a shower, and there was no water on the boat, which was miserable. Because more or less 2 months without a shower, or like clean clothes in a humid environment. But meanwhile, the Spanish Marine Corps, they were getting hot meals, breakfast and dinner delivered hot every morning and night. And then, like I said, for their birthday, they had wine and ham delivered and it was great. Other than that, I just kind of followed up with the projects, made sure the power plant thing was going smoothly. Checked in on the places, the hospitals and whatnot around with the guy. I made friends with the one guy from an NGO. I'm not going to say his name even if I do remember. Bob's generic enough.
Sure.
I would just touch base with him, and we would drive around town and make sure that things were kind of the little projects we had done were going along smoothly. And that was about that.
Yeah.
Back on, and then I took a helicopter back to the boat, and then stayed for maybe a night or two, and then took a helicopter to Cuba, to Guantanamo, and then from there they have a 730. They had for a long time. I used this when I was home later. They had a chartered United 737 that would fly from BWI to Jacksonville, Florida to Guantanamo to bring people home for leave or whatever every Saturday. And so I get on the 737 in Guantanamo. It lands in Jacksonville, and a bunch of drunk Army retirees pile onto the plane because this is, March, winter in Maryland. And they tell me, I learned that every weekend for free with space available, I could fly. What they do and what I could do is hop on this flight from BWI at 6 a.m, and go to a beach, do whatever all day Saturday, and then get back on the plane at 6 p.m. and be home in time for dinner, all for free. And that's what they do every weekend. They go play around. They would fly down, play around. They would hop on at 6 a.m. on this 737, fly down to Jacksonville, play around to golf, and then fly home wasted, all for free, because it was a chartered space available flight. So I learned about that, and I took advantage of that a few times myself.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm
that
just
was my return home.
I'm just trying to see because like as many times as I've talked about Guantanamo Bay, I never knew where it was.
So it's going to be on the southern side, kind of, there's sort of like.
Yeah, I found it here.
Yeah, you found it.
Right there.
There it is.
Yeah, so it's like the actual U.S. facility, is it like over here?
Most of it. So it's on both sides of the bay.
Okay.
There's windward and leeward side.
Okay.
And so they have to bring the ship had to come. They have to do this thing they call washdown coming off of a Mew, where they basically have to clean any soil off any of the vehicles so they don't bring home any parasites or whatever. So they did their washdown at Guantanamo. So in that port facility that you were just kind of zoomed in on.
Yeah.
And I think that's called I can't remember which. So I think I was on the windward side, because on the other side of the bay is where they had some old rundown barracks they put us in for a day or two. We were waiting for our plane over by the airport.
Okay.
And I just did some stupid thing. We bought it. Like, there was nothing to do there. So one day I'm just sitting around basically just drinking, and I buy a kite, and it was just so windy that I just kind of tied a fishing line to it and just let it go up until I was sure that it was somewhere over Cuba.
Yeah.
See if it was like a whole spool of fishing line I let out. And then we spent one day just snorkeling around the harbor, basically. They had like snorkeling gear for rent, and you could just go snorkeling. Killed a bunch of lionfish.
Oh.
They're an invasive species, so we were just spearfishing lionfish left and right.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, you wouldn't. I mean, you think about Guantanamo Bay, you don't think about like, oh, there's a child development center there, and there's a high school there.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, interesting. Okay. Well, I mean, that's probably a good as any an endpoint, unless you had anything else from your outline here.
No, I guess the only other thing that kind of worth mentioning about minor is so one of the things that always bothered me and that people find troubling, and this is also true in Iraq and Afghanistan, is they make these strange rules about you providing medical services. So in Haiti, we were allowed to evacuate anyone who had earthquake-related injuries. So if somebody had broken an arm and said that it was from the earthquake, we could get them a ride back to our ship or back to the Mercy, the hospital ship, to be seen. But any other injuries that happened to transpire couldn't be cared for. So no matter how desperate a situation was, we actually had a congressman, I can't remember which one, but a congressional delegation show up with this sob story, and a kid, I can't remember what injuries they had. I think he had been in a car accident, and we had to refuse them because, I think the congressman eventually got his way, but we had to more or less turn them away and be like, the rules are that only people injured by the earthquake are to be seen on the hospital ships. And the other thing I learned after the fact is that we had tons of interpreters, most of whom just stayed ashore or stayed on the boat. Because even though most of them were from Haiti, they did not like living in camp conditions in Haiti. So they all made up all kinds of excuses to stay on the boat, especially the Navy ones, and sat around and played cards in the chow hall all day. Like you would see them when I came back from being ashore for a month. There were just 20 Haitian Marines and sailors playing spades, in the middle of the mess hall. And meanwhile, I learned that later on I bumped into a fellow who had worked on the Mercy, and they had no interpreters there. So the baton was sitting, just classic like misallocation of resources. There were probably 15 to 20 interpreters sitting on the baton playing cards. And meanwhile, on the Mercy, the hospital ship, they were getting people brought to the ship that they couldn't speak to, and they had to fly them back to where they came from. Where did you come from? How do we get you back to a family member? You have a child who's been brought to us unconscious, and we have no way of communicating with them because they didn't have enough interpreters there, which is just a kind of funny misallocation to see these tons and tons of Marines taxed and brought in, pulled away from their Marine Corps job to then sit around on a boat for 2 months playing cards.
Yeah, and you want to say like among all the things that the military does, this is probably the most helpful and productive. I mean, you had said that before, but like even at the same time, there's things like that. There's other unintended consequences too, but there's also, I think, just the general thing of that, like it's just a product of the circumstance, but it does have an undue influence on the society that does exist there when you especially when you bring in soldiers.
Well, yeah, and especially like I said, this was regarded, and I think there's some questions now sort of, I think a lot of people will not regard American intervention here as legitimate. A lot of Haitians won't, is what I'm getting some notes of. Yeah. From what I've been reading. Because what's funny is like whatever legitimacy we bought, it's regarded by the military as we bought legitimacy. Right. This event, this earthquake event, and the relief we provided there, bought us legitimacy in the Haitians' eyes for the next time we need to leverage things there. Yeah.
That's interesting.
And also and also it buys legitimacy in the Americans' eyes. It's the reason that, probably a year or two after that, the Navy rolled out its Global Force for Good recruiting ads.
Right. Yeah. I remember those.
Where they're delivering humanitarian aid everywhere.
Yeah.
Because that's what makes us look good and legitimate. But, that's a small part of the machine. That's incidental, Well,
and I think that at the time, maybe the Haitians saw the Marine Corps intervention as being like a better thing, more welcomed. But I mean, as time has gone on, the aid effort to Haiti post-earthquake has been, it's regarded as one of the worst colossal aid efforts in the history of aid efforts. I mean, and maybe in part of it's the UN peacekeeping disasters, but the rest of it is, the Clintons and all these NGOs that just basically used Haiti as a huge, giant money laundering operation. And of course, that's not directly a comment on the mission that you guys did down there, but as much as just the whole thing in general, Yeah.
And sorry, thinking of the Clintons and child abduction made me think of this. I can't imagine why, but I was reminded of one other thing I learned there that was it didn't really hit us, but we heard story, like people were concerned. Just a funny thing I learned, if I in Haiti, just kind of, this is random, but it wasn't until I went to Haiti I learned that orphans sometimes actually have parents. In the American context, an orphan is the parents are deceased, the way we think of it linguistically. But you heard these incidents of people adopting children. But in Haiti and a lot of other countries, and even in the United States, if you ever watch, what's that silly orphan movie? What's the one? There's a singing and dancing orphan. It's an older movie.
Orphan Annie or something.
Yeah, something like that.
The sun will come out tomorrow.
Annie, right?
Yeah.
She's got a mom and dad. Her mom's a drunk or whatever the case may be. Her parents aren't dead. They just gave her up. And in Haiti, there's a lot of times where you give a kid in other countries, I assume, you give a kid to the orphanage, you haven't abandoned them per se. You just can't care for them. So you're just visiting on weekends or monthly when you can. So then to hear that their orphan child, it doesn't mean you've renounced all parental rights, So to hear that was one of those weird misunderstandings that happened where some people grabbed up some kids from an orphanage thinking, oh, this will help. Their orphanage is destroyed or whatever. And you end up with this sort of incident where they've kidnapped my child, and that was interesting.
Yeah.
But, and then, who knows, maybe they ended up with the Clintons, who knows? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, okay, Scott. Well, are you still doing Why I'm Anti-War?
I guess I shouldn't put you on the spot, but do you want to set a date for one in the future?
Oh, hell yeah.
I am. I very much am interested in doing it again. I have some time back now. I just I lined up one person, and then we kept missing each other. He dropped a date, and then I dropped a date. So my restart got delayed again, but maybe we'll communicate. Maybe if we can set a date. I don't need much of your time. I try to keep them short. It's hard for me, but yeah.
Always glad to do it. And then you got your Twitter handle here, and your website. Do you have a website for Why Am I?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I don't. I bought the domain, and I don't know how to build a website. So
yeah. Well, maybe I can help you with that. But okay. Well, thanks for coming on, man. And then we're gonna have to do your first tour in Afghanistan sometime soon. We'll go back in time a little bit.
Yeah. All right. Thanks so much, bud.
Yep, my pleasure.
Take care.